We begin this with breaking news now from Rafah. The Israeli army has warned all residents and displaced people to leave the eastern neighborhoods of Rafah. It says they must move to the Al-Mawasi area near the coastline. That's ahead of what it says will be the use of extreme force in the eastern part of the city. More than 1.5 million people have been sheltering in Rafah after the Israeli army forced them out of northern and central Gaza.
Israel now demands that 1 million people from Gaza, who are now trapped in this tiny place called Rafah, evacuate, and the Western government's response has been hypocritical. While Americans were busy watching the Super Bowl, Israel started bombing Rafah, and they have been using all of their military arsenals. They used fighter jets, artillery shellings, and tanks. These are the exact sort of military arsenals you would use when going to a full-scale war. Remember, these are just innocent civilians. Their homes, livelihoods, and every single thing that's worthy of being called human beings have already been destroyed. Israel first ordered them to move from the north to the southern part of Gaza, claiming that it was the only safe place for them. Not only has the whole world seen that that is a lie, but now, Israel is ordering them to evacuate from Rafah. Where would these 1 million people move to? They can't move back to the north, because according to Israel, it's not safe. The question is, if this is not ethnic cleansing, then what is it?
Graduate Student Association.
Assalamu alaikum, meaning peace be upon you all. I was born in a beautiful city in Palestine. It is for this moment and this accomplishment that my parents decided to come here and build a life here. So to my mother and father, I'd like to begin by extending my deepest gratitude for their dedication, sacrifices, and love that were cornerstone to my success, as well as my brothers and sisters who have always been there for me. I am not alone in this gratitude. Every single one of you in the audience has sacrificed for a graduate here or contributed to their success in ways that we will never forget. So thank you all. Now, it is essential to understand and acknowledge the unique journey that has brought us all to this moment in our time here. In our time here, we have witnessed profound challenges and injustices that have shaken our world like never before. We witnessed and are still witnessing an unprecedented amount of loss of innocent life in Palestine. Over the last 7 months, at least 40,000 human beings have been killed by the state of Israel. These people were not only innocent Muslims, but innocent Christians and innocent Jews as well. These people were civilians, a majority of them children. We have witnessed the demolition of one of the oldest churches in the world, of mosques, of universities, and even of designated safe zones by the United Nations. Although today is a day of accomplishments and happiness, this is a difficult reality that we must acknowledge as we proceed to the next chapter of our lives. Why, you may ask? Because we, the people, are funding these horrors with our tax dollars. Every single one of you will continue into your professional lives and be impacted by this. Consider the following. The fact that teachers who quite literally shape our future are paid less than a full-time and than an average full-time employee, or that 1.2 million veterans who put their lives on the line for this country, that they live below the poverty line, or that our top health insurance companies made nearly $69 billion in profits the same year that 68,000 Americans died due to a lack of access to health care. We are the generation that must address these issues at home. We must ask why we have sent around $320 billion in foreign aid to a state convicted of war crimes, countless violations of international law, and who are on trial for genocide, while Americans are dying due to lack of access to health care. This is the message that I want to leave you all with today, that we are the generation. A testimony to that statement is the thousands of beautiful, brave students, faculty, and administrators who are camping outside of universities demanding for a better use of our funds. If there are any of you here who feel as though you cannot relate or are uninterested in what I have said thus far, I would challenge you to consider this. Growing up, we learned about the atrocities of the Holocaust, the horrors of slavery, and we wondered, how on earth did these things happen? Well, there is a popular phrase that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So if you wonder what you would have done during those horrific times, I implore you to take a look at what you are doing right now. We are the generation that will not accept being divided based on religion or background. We will not accept unwarranted, uneducated, and hateful labels as we demand a better future for ourselves and for justice. I apologize that this is not a typical graduation speech, but there is nothing typical about the times that we are living in. There is nothing typical about 15,000 children, live-streamed deaths being watched. And there is nothing acceptable about our institutional complicity, silence, or the gross misuse of police force nationwide. The world is in desperate need of change, and we must be the ones to do it. So this goes to everybody here today, my friends and family, professors, deans, and my fellow students. We must use every opportunity we have to make change, no matter how scary it is. As the graduates of today, we have an opportunity to be the heroes of tomorrow. If we look to history, we will see that the students have always been on the right side of history. The key to this is solidarity, accepting discomfort at the cost of truth, having difficult conversations to find common grounds, and working together towards salam, which, if you recall, means peace. Remember when I leave this stage that my calling was one for peace. So to not support that would not be a reflection of our UT values or our humanity. I will end by sending my salam to the struggling teachers and veterans, to my fellow Americans, to my family in Palestine, to the people of Gaza, and to all of those who are fighting for peace. Congratulations to you all, and salam.
As stated earlier in the program, invited speakers are sharing their personal views and do not represent the views or values of the University of Toledo.
Of all of the insane discussions that we've had in here, this one absolutely has to take the biscuit. Iran's unprecedented attack on Israel. As if Iran woke up one day and decided to strike Israel out of the blue. As if Israel's targeted attack on the Iranian embassy in Syria, which killed 16 people, a flagrant violation of the Vienna Convention, had never happened. Everybody outside this room knows the cause of the escalation is Israel. Everybody knows that Israel has been trying to broaden the conflict in the region to detract from their genocidal war on Gaza. And everybody knows that the EU, who for 7 months of the most proportionately destructive war in history have failed to condemn and sanction Israel, have immediately and unanimously condemned and sanctioned Iran for a disciplined retaliation which killed nobody. The world is changing. Your settler colonial project has been exposed like never before, and the world can see that the EU emperor has no clothes.
Thanks very much for joining me. I want to take a few minutes to discuss something that is not being discussed adequately in the corporate media, nor in Congress. And that is that right now, today, in Gaza, we are witnessing one of the worst humanitarian disasters in modern history. It is unfolding before our very eyes, and we must not turn away from that reality. And I'm sorry to tell you what I think many of you already know, that we in the United States of America are deeply complicit in what is happening. What we do in Congress right now could well determine whether tens of thousands of people live or die. And as I've said many times, Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas terrorism. But it absolutely does not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people, and that, tragically, is what we are seeing. As of today, Israel's military campaign has killed more than 27,000 Palestinians and injured some 68,000, 2/3 of whom are women and children. Unbelievably, 1.7 million people have been driven from their homes, nearly 80% of the population. This is more than twice the population of my own state of Vermont. These people have no understanding as to where they will be tomorrow or whether they will ever return back into their community.
Let me just read this. Our race is the master race. We are divine gods on this planet. We are as different from the inferior races as they are from insects. In fact, compared to our race, other races are beasts and animals, cattle at best. Other races are considered as human excrement. Our destiny is to rule over the inferior races. Our earthly kingdom will be ruled by our leader with a rod of iron. The masses will lick our feet and serve us as our slaves. Any idea who said that? Hitler. Yeah, I would have thought that too. It's Menachem Begin. Many of the Israelis, many Jewish scholars know that their covenant is with Enlil.
Yusuf Hamash is the Gaza advocacy officer for the Norwegian Refugee Council. A former journalist, he's been documenting this war for the last 3 weeks. He moved his family of 4, including his kids, 5-year-old Ilya and 3-year-old Ahmed, to southern Gaza, taking shelter in Khan Yunis. With limited connectivity and power, he could only speak to me via phone.
In spite of all of that, the bombardment and all the violence, we have a lot of responsibilities towards our families and children, so we have to find a way every day to manage to find bread and water. So the most challenging is water.
If you needed water right now, what would you do?
I will give you an example. We had the water 2 days ago, but we needed the fuel to push the water up to the house, and I couldn't find it. And this mission takes me 5 hours. Everything is almost impossible.
So 5 hours just to try to get water for your family on one day?
Yes, 5 hours to push the water to the house. I had to buy water through other private sources. We are more than 30 people in one apartment. Now we take showers once a week. You wash your face once a day. We consume less because we want to make it last more. We are trying to protect our children. And the water is the one essential thing for that.
Yusuf, what do you tell your children about what's going on?
Yeah, she's 5 years old. She understands there's bombing. She understands what's going on. But with Ahmed, who's 2 years old, sometimes I'm trying to convince him it's raining, it's thunderstrike, or this is fireworks. It's not only the sound of the bombing, it's also you feel that it's an earthquake.
Yusuf, if you don't mind my asking, how are you doing?
I don't think about me, but I don't think there is psychosocial support method in this planet will help us to recover from what we are seeing here. And my children, when there is rocket or bombing around us, they run towards me, just hugging me or crying. I think I use this father. It's really awful situation when you feel that you are useless as a father in front of your children. And you cannot even protect them and keep them safe.
כשאנחנו נלחמים מלחמת מצווה, במקרה הזה בעזה, על פי פתחר הדין, לא צריך לקרוא לשמה. הסברה לזה מאוד ברורה, ולא תהרוג אותם, הם יהרגו אותך. המפרדים של היום הם הילדים של המבצע הקודם, שהשארנו אותם בחיים. והנשים בעצם אלה שיוצרות את המפרדים. מה שאומר שההגדרה הזו בשביל לא תחייב כל נשמה היא מאוד ברורה בסברה. זה או אתה או הם. בעצם הלא תחייב כל נשמה הוא מבוסס על פי נימוקי הפסוקים על הבא לעובדך, שכם לעובדו. והבא לעובדך כאן בממד הרחב, לא רק האיש בין ה-18, 16, 20, 30 שמרים עליך הנשק, אלא גם הדור העתיד, וגם מי שמייצר את דור העתיד. כי באמת אין הבדל. מה? אין בלתי מעורבים. אין בלתי מעורבים. ודרך אגב, גם אדם זקן, כשאתה מגדיר כזקן, מסוגל להרים רובה ולראות. הפשט של התורה הוא מאוד מאוד מובן גם מסברה. ואז על פי כל הערכות של גורמי הביטחון, 95 עד 98%, הם רוצים בהשמדתנו. זה רוב שהוא... אותו דבר. אותו דבר. כי אם אתה משאיר אותו, כאילו אתה לא יכול להתחכם עם התורה, כשהתורה אומרת, לא תחל כל משמע, לא תחל כל משמע, היום תינוק, היום ילד, מחר, לוחם. הלוחמים, נקרא לזה, המחבלים של היום בני ה-18, היו ילדים בני 8, בני 10 שנים במבצע הקודם.
The devastation caused by Israeli bombardments is unprecedented in modern history. Some 70% of the housing units have been damaged or destroyed. Can you imagine that? The Israeli bombing attacks have destroyed most of the infrastructure in Gaza. There is no electricity and very little water. There are virtually no places to buy bread and basic necessities, as most of the bakeries have been destroyed or shut down. Raw sewage is now running into the streets, and communications are extremely difficult because there is little or no cell phone service available. Despite the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have been injured, there are no fully functional hospitals in Gaza, and just 1 in 3 is operational at all. Amid repeated attacks on healthcare facilities, doctors and nurses are still bravely working to save lives, even without regular electricity or basic medical supplies. Israeli bombing and the onerous restrictions placed on aid entering Gaza mean that only a tiny fraction of the food, water, medicine, and fuel that is needed can get into Gaza. And even when supplies do get across the border, very little of that can reach beyond the immediate area around the Rafah crossing near Egypt.
But this is the first time I've ever heard that there's a need to condemn and say, yes, but of course they're suffering, but first we need to condemn. Are we out of our minds? Condemning the resistance of the people who are being oppressed and killed, subjected to genocide for 75 years? Are we out of our minds? Are we out of our minds? Are we outside of our minds when we let this ridiculous narrative take hold and spread and then participate in it, nodding our heads like sheep? Oh, and by the way, yes, there is a genocide going on and it's terrible. But first we have to condemn the Palestinians who dare to stand up. Palestinians who have shown an ability to sacrifice and amounts of courage that, as far as I can remember, are unprecedented, facing this horrific, horrific oppression.
אלוקים עשה אותם בשביל שיעשו פה... בשביל לשרת את היהודים. כל הגויים שאתה רואה שיש בעולם, המיליארדים האלה, הם הכל רק בשביל שהיהודים יהיה להם איזה תועלת. עכשיו, אנחנו לא רואים את זה, אנחנו לא יודעים בדיוק. היות ואנחנו בגלות, אז אוטומטי עדיין הם עוד לא משרתים אותנו לגמרי, רק חלקית. כל אחד יהיה לו, כשבוא נבוא, אז כל אחד יהיה לו... אלפים עבדים, 2,800 עבדים.
בינתיים, המשיח לא כאן, אז איך הם משרתים אותנו?
הם בונים לנו רכבים, דירות, בניינים, הם בונים את זה. לנו, משרתים את היהודים.
אבל יש גם יהודים שעושים את זה.
בקושי.
Do you believe that the Gentiles, the Goyim, will one day become the slaves of the Jews? So I believe it's part of the Torah.
אני חושב שיהודי הוא קצת יותר... כאילו, ודאי שיהיה לי עדיפות גדולה הרבה יותר לעזור ליהודים מאשר לגויים.
למה?
למה? כי יהודי הוא אח שלי.
טוב, אני לא עוד פעם להביא את המספר המדויק, על כל יהודי אמור להיות 800 או יותר.
The 56 years of occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, have been shaped by Israel's consistent, grave violations against the Palestinian people. The UAE is confident that the court has before it ample evidence to assist its identification of those violations and determination of their legal consequences. As I turn to my second point, I will outline briefly how the situation has severely deteriorated since July 2023. Under international law, the Gaza Strip is occupied territory. Gaza is also one of the most densely populated places on Earth. For over 4 months now, and after enduring 17 years of blockade, its population of over 2.2 million has been under siege, faced with severe restrictions on water, food, and other essential goods. The level of human suffering faced by civilians in Gaza, predominantly women and children, is on a scale seldom seen in the modern era. Israel's indiscriminate attacks on the Gaza Strip have caused massive civilian casualties and the extensive destruction of homes, schools, and hospitals. Some 75% of Gaza's total population is displaced. I note here, Mr. President, the latest orders issued to the Israeli Defense Forces to plan for the evacuation of Rafah ahead of another military offensive. That offensive would leave the approximately 1.5 million displaced Gazans taking refuge in the city with nowhere to go. These plans have been met with the international community's resounding rejection. Israel has imposed a policy of collective punishment against the Palestinian people in violation of Article 33 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Israel has repeatedly issued so-called evacuation orders that in effect seek to transfer Palestinians forcibly in violation of Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Israel has also failed its duty of ensuring the food and medical supplies of the population in Gaza in violation of Article 55 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Israel has further failed to protect the wounded and the sick in violation of Article 16 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Each passing day is met with further violations of international humanitarian law.
But what are we really talking about? Again, we've heard lists and lists and lists of crimes committed by the State of Israel. Lists and lists of crimes against humanity. And there's always seems to me like there's a little bit of a sense of surprise, a little bit of shock, a little bit as though this was somehow not predictable. What we are seeing now in Gaza was not only predictable, it was preventable. And we did not prevent it. The previous massacre in Gaza was predictable too, and that was not prevented. And we can go on and on and on and on back 75 years. Because what could possibly be expected from an apartheid regime established after a massive campaign, open massive campaign of ethnic cleansing, massacres, and the beginning of a genocide that is still going on today? What could possibly be expected? That was the founding moment of the State of Israel. Close to 1 million people forced out of their land. God knows how many were massacred. And that was the beginning. That was 1948. So now we're shocked. All these lists and lists and lists and lists, there's nothing new about them. Except this time the numbers are higher. This time the numbers are, even by Israeli standards, it is shocking. But this was predictable and this was preventable. And every time something happens, we rise, we protest, we demand, and we forget. Instead of standing there and demanding an end, an absolute end to the oppression and the killing of Palestinians. An end to it. Not a ceasefire to it, an end to it. A political solution that will guarantee the lives, the security, the safety of Palestinians. That has never been discussed. I don't recall it ever being discussed. That guarantees need to be put in place. Guarantees need to be put in place for the life and security and the safety of Palestinians, because Palestinians have been living in a state of terror for 75 years. Not just now, but for 75 years living in a state of terror, whether they're in the West Bank, whether they're in the Gaza Strip, whether they're citizens of the state of Israel or so-called citizens. They have been living in a state of terror, and they still do today. Granted, the level of terror has increased since October the 7th.
It did not start on October the 7th. It did not start on 2021 when Israel was raiding the Al-Aqsa Mosque, smashing their weapons against the faces of women praying during the holiest month. It did not start in 2018 on the Great March of Return, where Razan al-Najjar, Yasser Mutaja, as well as countless journalists, children and Palestinians were marching to the fence, met with sniper fire. It didn't start on 2014, where 500 children's lives were captured in the name of Zionism in one summer. It didn't start in 2012, nor did it in 2009, nor did it in 2008. It started when Zionism as an ideology first entered the mind of Theodore Herzl.
What I witnessed during 10 days in Gaza was not war, it was annihilation. Joining me now is the author of that op-ed, Dr. Ifran Galaria. And Dr. Galaria, thank you so much for being here. I read your op-ed and it broke my heart, to be honest with you. So I want to allow you to just speak and tell me what you saw and what you experienced in Gaza.
Of course. And Joy, thanks for having me on the show. You know, I understand in war that you're going to have civilian casualties. You're going to have displaced citizens. But it only took us a few minutes crossing into Rafah, Gaza, to recognize and realize what we were really stepping into. Myself and my team immediately recognized that what we were facing was an extraordinary humanitarian crisis. This was unbelievable. Imagine, Joy, almost 1 million displaced civilians struggling for shelter, struggling for food, struggling for water. It was an incredible sight to take in.
And let's talk about inside the hospitals, because we know hospitals have been bombed. They have been invaded in some instances. Are there doctors still operating in these hospitals? Are there emergency rooms operating? I mean, you described these hospitals doubling basically as shelters.
Correct. You know, the entire healthcare system in Gaza is broken. It's utterly collapsed. And let me explain to you the scene of when we first saw the European Gaza hospital. As you drive toward the hospital, you begin to start seeing collections and clusters of tents that start blocking the roads and start clinging to the side of the hospital. Patients were then This is a hospital that was designed to take care for about 300 patients, and yet it was filled with 1,000 patients. And the humanity that you saw outside began to spill into the hallways. People were living in stair corridors, in storage closets. What they would do is hang up a blanket or a sheet to cordon off little areas to create small areas of privacy for them. The hospital was completely overwhelmed. And the physicians and the medical staff, not only were they struggling through all the same things that the rest of the Palestinians were struggling through, but they then were overwhelmed and exhausted. And I'll give you an example. A plastic surgeon who I worked with, he was the only plastic surgeon in the hospital. He was covering it 24/7, and his home was destroyed, and he was living in the hospital during this whole time.
You also describe parents bringing in their children with a hole through the front of their head from sniper fire. So were you seeing a lot of those kinds of victims, children who had been shot by sniper fire?
Correct. You know, myself and my team, we felt there was a disturbingly high number of civilian casualties. We did not feel that there was a distinction being made between targeting terrorists, soldiers, and targeting civilians. And these stories that you just described is what we were hearing and seeing routinely. I was in the hospital. I lived there, literally slept on the floor of the operating room holding area because there's no other place for me to stay. The incident that you're describing was one that happened on a regular basis. On that particular incident, several children were brought in to the hospital with head injuries, and they were cared for by one of the members of our team. It was very disturbing to take care of.
The 1 in 6 children in northern Gaza is severely malnourished, according to UNICEF. Did you see signs of hunger and starvation?
Everywhere. I mean, in the morning, as soon as we left our guest house for the very first day, you see lines collecting around food distribution sites. And in the hospital, almost all the patients were universally cachectic. They were had poor nutrition, they were dehydrated. And you know, Joy, this actually contributed to a lot of the medical problems that they were enduring. Because their protein was so poor, because their health was so poor, they weren't able to heal.
Dr. Ifran Galaria, thank you for doing what you did and for coming back and telling us what you saw. I appreciate you.
You have 6 billion idol worshippers who makes God angry every second of their life. Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Tibet, Nepal, Thailand. So many. India alone is 500 million. China is 2 billion. So many, 2 billion Christians, which are idol worshippers. Between Chinese, Hindus, Buddhists, and Christian, at least 6.5 billion people are idol worshippers that, according to the Torah, do not have the right to live. Idol worshipper goy, it's death penalty. Not only Jews. Even a goy who bow down to an idol, who believe in JC, deserve death.
Let's take a deep breath and understand what all of this means for the men, women, and children who are in Gaza today. Not only have they been driven from their homes, not only have most of those homes been destroyed or damaged, not only are they unable to access the medical care or the clean water they need, but unbelievable and horrifying, hundreds of thousands of children in Gaza face starvation. Let me repeat. Hundreds of thousands of children in Gaza face starvation. The UN says that 1 in 10 children under the age of 5 in Gaza is already acutely malnourished, and the entire population is at imminent risk of famine. What every physician knows is that malnutrition in small children causes permanent physical and cognitive damage. In other words, even if the war ended today, large numbers of children in Gaza will suffer permanent physical damage from what has happened in Gaza. And that's not to mention the extraordinary psychological damage that these children will suffer from as they have witnessed all of the death and destruction around them. If nothing changes, we will soon have hundreds of thousands of children literally starving to death before our very eyes. And believe it or not, the situation could even get worse. Right now, 1.4 million people, more than half of the population of Gaza, are squeezed into the area around Rafah, right up against the Egyptian border. Rafah was a town of just 250,000 people before the war. Now there are 1.4 million people there, more than 5 times the original population. These people are packed into crowded UN shelters or sleeping out in tents. It's a daily struggle for them to find food or water. And in the midst of all of this horror and suffering, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, the leader of Israel's extreme right-wing government has announced that Israel will soon launch a major ground offensive against Rafah, where 1.4 million people are located. What that means is Netanyahu will soon be forcing these desperate people to evacuate once again, and nobody has any idea as to where they will go. These families, already exhausted, traumatized, and hungry, will once again be displaced with no plan for how they will survive. I struggle to find words to describe this cruelty. And let me state once again that much of what is happening in Gaza now is funded by U.S. taxpayers. These are our bombs and our military equipment that is being used. We are complicit. This is not only an Israeli war, this is an American war. Prime Minister Netanyahu says that all of this is necessary. He says that Israel will only accept, quote unquote, total victory in this war. Yet asked recently what total victory would look like, he chillingly said that it is like smashing glass, quote, into small pieces, and then you continue to smash it into even smaller pieces, and you continue hitting them, end of quote. The question we must ask ourselves over and over again is how many more children and innocent people will be smashed in the process? And why is the United States helping to fund this humanitarian disaster? It is quite clear that beyond total destruction of Gaza, Netanyahu has no plan.
Fine. To the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
No. I was with him until he said the eternal capital of the Jewish people. President Trump has the right to make whatever foreign policy he wants, and if he feels that Miami Beach is best to recognize as the capital of Israel, that's his business, he can do it. But once he starts talking about the Jewish people, now he's encroaching upon religion, and now that's my domain. There is absolutely no political relationship between the Jewish people and Jerusalem. It's merely a holy city. The Jewish people don't have a capital. We never had a capital. Countries have capitals. States have capitals. That's the definition of a capital. Capital, dictionary, noun, the most important city or town of a country or region. Now, the Jewish people are not a country or region. The Jewish people are a religious community. We pray towards Jerusalem, but we relate to Jerusalem only as a holy city, not as a political capital city of the Jewish people. And all of those overtures that we make to Jerusalem and the yearning that Jews have for Jerusalem is only as a holy city, not as a capital city. And because it's a holy city, it doesn't matter who has sovereignty over it. Jerusalem is just as holy and just as much Jerusalem, whether it's under the auspices of the Turks or the Romans or the British or whoever. It's important to know that the Zionists were the ones that started this business of the capital of the Jewish people, and it's an idea that conflicts directly with the teachings of Judaism. At Mount Sinai in the desert, the Torah says, the Bible says about us, Hayom hazeh niyesa la'am. That's when we became a people. The Jewish people aren't a people because of a land. We're not a people because of a language. We're not a people because of a culture. We're a religion, and when we were deputized into the religion, when we accepted the religion given to us by God, that's when we became the Jewish people. We had no land, no territories, we had no capital city, and in fact, our commentators say the reason why God gave the Jews the Torah in the desert before they went into the Holy Land was in order to teach them that land, country, has nothing to do with your Jewishness. Your Jewishness is because you accept the religion. A couple of years ago, the Pope went to visit Netanyahu, and Netanyahu was bragging to the Pope, this is where Jesus lived in this land, and he spoke Hebrew here. So the Pope corrected him. The Pope said, no, Aramaic. And Pope was right. Netanyahu says, yeah, but he understood Hebrew. Well, maybe he did, but Hebrew was never the national language of the Jewish people. It was a holy language, just like land of Israel was a holy land. Oh, by the way, if you see the clip and you don't know which of the two people talking is Netanyahu and which is the Pope's the one wearing the yarmulke. Even if we were to pretend that the Jewish people have a capital, that would have nothing to do with whether Jerusalem should be the capital of Israel, because Israel's not the Jewish people. Israel has nothing to do with the old Jewish Commonwealth. It's a country that was created in 1948. When you hear the Israelis or the Zionists talk about how Jerusalem has a connection with the Jewish people for 2,000 years, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, it's all true, but that doesn't translate to, well, therefore Jerusalem has to be part of Israel. People think that Israel is some kind of continuation of the Jewish government, but it's not. It's a completely different form of government, completely different values, completely different ideology, and completely different people. These are not religious Jews that are running the country. These are atheists. And yet, the Israeli prime ministers from Ben-Gurion all the way up to Netanyahu use the Bible as an excuse for ownership of the land. Ben-Gurion, he says the mandate is not our Bible, but the Bible is our mandate. This is a man that didn't believe the Bible was given by God. He didn't believe God ever spoke to prophets. He didn't believe it at all. Neither does Benjamin Netanyahu. It says in the Bible, watch the Sabbath to keep it holy. Netanyahu doesn't refrain from work on the Sabbath. It says not to eat non-kosher food in the Bible. Does Netanyahu do that? No. There is nothing holy in the Bible that Netanyahu cares about. The only thing he cares about is his land. Restorationist Protestants, we call them evangelical Christians today, they existed hundreds of years before any Jewish Zionist was ever born. And because the evangelicals, the restorationists, had great influence in Britain, and Britain had the mandate, the Zionists very, very much adopted the Christian evangelical interpretation of the Bible, and that's what they use today. You'll find that Benjamin Netanyahu sometimes even espouses Christian evangelical interpretations of the Bible over the Jewish ones. A number of years ago, Netanyahu spoke at the site of the Auschwitz concentration camp, and he mentioned a prophecy in the book of Yechezkel about how the prophets saw dry bones rising from the ground and growing flesh and becoming live again. And Netanyahu said that that prophecy is fulfilled with the state of Israel, because the Jews were dry bones and now they grew flesh and they're real people again. This interpretation is not found anywhere in any Jewish source, because in Judaism, this is impossible. But for over a century, this has been a Christian evangelical interpretation. The Zionists, when they talk about the Bible, they're not talking about the Judaic version of Judaism and Jewishness. They're talking really about the Christian evangelical version. Netanyahu has no right to claim that his state is mine. I was born in America. My father was born in Poland. My mother's family is from England. We have nothing to do with Israel. We're Jews. We're observant Jews, we're religious Jews. I wear a yarmulke. Netanyahu doesn't. I keep the Shabbos. Netanyahu doesn't. And Israel is not my nation state in the slightest.
But Israel, through its lobby, has manifested so much power over the United States Congress that we're embroiled in wars that I don't believe we should be. Our kids are coming back in body bags. And in the long run, this Israeli lobby is going to hurt Israel. So as soon as you mention Israel, someone claims you're an anti-Semite. The truth of the matter is, I'm pro-American, Sean. And I don't like, hear me. Hear me. I don't like what's happening in America today.
That's fair.
Our kids are coming back in body bags.
Wait a minute, but you're saying
we're bankrupt, completely broke.
But you're suggesting here that we're fighting wars on behalf of Israel. But you just mentioned the 9/11 attacks.
I think a lot of that has been influenced by Israel.
Hear me now, Congressman.
And yes, I believe Israel, through their lobby, has manifested total power of the Congress of the United States.
Total power.
And my concern is that taxpayers and the citizens of the United States should control their government, not a foreign entity. Sean, I'm not suggesting it. I'm telling it.
There is tremendous pressure inside the political process to make sure that the voters stay aligned inside either the Democrat or Republican parties. Why? Because both of those parties have been captured by special interests. And so therefore, for example, if people in the United States care about education, But unfortunately, there's a banker that gets in between the student and the student's ability to go to school. If they care about health care, there's the insurance industry that gets in between the patient and the doctor who is seeking to provide care. And so we have all of these special interests that have positioned themselves in between the political decision makers and the people themselves. The process now is more responsive to those special interests than it is to the values and the wishes of the American people. And there's no more special interest that has any more influence than the pro-Israel lobby. And so then when I did outreach, for example, to the Muslim community in the United States, I bumped into the pro-Israel lobby, which of course does not want to have to contend with a politicized Muslim community, which is as large as and is as wealthy as the pro-Israel lobby is in the United States. So yes, I first-handedly and also frontally was assaulted by the presence of the pro-Israel lobby to such an extent.
Physically assaulted?
Well, politically assaulted,
okay,
to such an extent that my father had to ask the question publicly, what does Stone Mountain, Georgia have to do with Israel? What I was doing was servicing the needs of my constituents. And I was not allowed to do that because I did not toe the line on U.S. policy for Israel.
What line is that they wanted? Were you told directly that you had to toe a line, or explain that to me?
Well, every candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress people have to sign this pledge.
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money. So, for example, it was almost like water torture for me. My parents observed this. I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput. I made it public. This probably nobody had said anything about it, but I made it public, and then, the excuse was, well, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed, and but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress. 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives have to now write a paragraph, which basically says the same thing. So it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever. And then, if you don't perform appropriately, then you don't get money to run your campaign. The problem is that it requires an awful lot of money to run a campaign. And whether it's a woman's organization, an environmental organization, people can read about this on the internet if they're interested. If you go to thomas.loc.gov, that is the official United States Congress website. And if you put in the name Gus Savage, because Gus Savage was a black member of Congress who was targeted by the pro-Israel lobby. And he had the foresight to use his position as an incumbent in the House of Representatives to put his experience on the congressional record for the entire existence of the United States Congress now, people will be able to access his experience. And what he wrote was that it was the Garden Club of New Jersey that gave his opponent $5,000. But it wasn't really the Garden Club of New Jersey. It was the activists who were associated with AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee.
A CBS News investigation has uncovered a loophole that allows accused and convicted American pedophiles to escape justice by moving to Israel.
Jewish Community Watch, an organization that hunts down accused pedophiles who flee to Israel from the U.S., exploiting a process called Law of Return, whereby any Jewish person can move to Israel and automatically gain citizenship. The ease with which pedophiles seem able to use this law as an escape route haunts victims like Mendy Hahn, who says he was abused from age 8 by a teacher at an Orthodox Jewish school in Los Angeles. Yom Tov pled guilty in 2002 to sexually abusing and committing lewd acts against 3 other boys. He served jail time, but when he was released, he violated his probation and, according to JCW, fled to Israel with help from individuals within the Orthodox Jewish community. JCW tracked Yom Tov down and confronted him with a hidden camera in Jerusalem, where he admitted to illegally fleeing the United States with help and using a fake passport to enter Israel.
I was supposed to stay for 5 years in the same city. I was supposed to come on the side of the city. I was supposed to go every 2 weeks to the police station. I left within a week later.
The district attorney here in Los Angeles told us they have not requested Yom Tov's extradition and that they had no other comment. Jewish Community Watch says that is the problem. If American officials don't try to get accused pedophiles from Israel, then they simply escape justice and leave children at risk.
Here in Israel, for generations, we kill the Palestinians. We injure the Palestinians. We have more than 1,500 Palestinians in administrative detention. We demolish their houses here in Jerusalem. We cut down their olive trees. We confiscate their property, their waters. And most Israelis expect them to accept it. And when they don't accept it, they react in violent way. They blame them, the Palestinians. For most Israelis, we hold millions of Palestinians under occupation for generations. They are deprived their basic rights. And for most Israelis, it can go on forever. Look, don't get me wrong, I'm not justifying the violence, but this is I think the realistic conclusion. How can we expect the Palestinians to live under occupation forever? Every Israeli citizen knows clearly that if you dare to show the slightest sentiment towards the people of Gaza, if you criticize killing of innocent civilians, including women and children in Gaza, you will be politically persecuted. You will go through public shaming. You will lose your job. And in my case, be put in jail. I wanted as many Israelis to know what is done on their behalf. Most Israelis don't know, because the mainstream media doesn't show what really goes on in Gaza, what we are doing in Gaza. They wished me to die, they wished my children to die, they threatened to rape my daughter. That was the kind of reactions that were against. I was called for a hearing on October 18th, and the next day I was fired. The police asked me to come over for an interrogation. The minute I walked into the police station, they cuffed my hands and legs and confiscated my phone. Then, 5 detectives escorted me to my apartment and ransacked the place upside down. They put me in solitary confinement in a cell with no windows. They took away my watch. I didn't know when it was daytime, when it was nighttime. For them, I'm Hamas supporter. They refused to enter the class. And they began a very, very violent demonstration. I was literally under siege inside the teacher's room.
Zionism, the establishment of the State of Israel, involved a monumental injustice to the Palestinians, an injustice that is only exacerbated over time and reached its climax, its most cruel climax in Gaza today. And I, as a Jew, feel a moral duty to support, to speak up for the Palestinian cause, and I think that all Jews also have a moral duty to stand up by the Palestinians in their hour of need.
I really thought about it, and I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is the greatest threat to world peace, and I think, honestly, we should take their nuclear weapons away. Maybe we invade Israel because they're a threat to national security.
The key point about international law is that one appalling thing does not justify another. Therefore, 57 years of an extremely harsh, illegal occupation by Israel of West Bank and Gaza did not justify the barbarous attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. Similarly, what they did, which is beyond unspeakable, we know what they did, does not justify the killing of, as you say, 25,000 people, of which, by the way, the figure I think is a lot higher than 10,000 children. I think it's probably closer to 20,000 women and children. Now remember, that is probably the highest kill rate of any military killing anybody since the Rwandan genocide of 1994. 27,000 people, civilians, killed in 4.5 months is an astonishing thing. You ask, is it collective punishment? How can it not be collective punishment? 2.2 million people are being shunted around in the rain, being bombed repeatedly wherever they go, the so-called safe haven.
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with. Now they looking nervously, and I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better, see. I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say, yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way.
Changed, man, all your music and arrangement. You don't know shit, shut your mouth, you can save it. I'm the same dude that got his come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. For taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it, get after it. Get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future. We all start losers. We're all late bloomers. Gotta struggle through the sewer.
What you say? Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.